What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of In the Box, episode 12. I'm feeling good. Hockey is officially America's sport. How are you doing, Matt?
Go USA. It's thrilling. I'm thrilled.
Free fucking bird. If you can see, we don't have if you're watching this on YouTube, we don't have a capital B, so we had to flip a P. But yeah, it's a great time to be an American, considering the United States for the first time ever has gone back to back at the World Juniors. What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on it overall?
Well, first of all, they couldn't have done it without some big help from their main competition, right? Team Canada was so bad, Justin Trudeau resigned like 6 hours before we started filming this. It's amazing. I mean, at this point, everything that there is to say about Canada has been said.
Focus on U.S. first. We'll dive into Canada later. Okay. We'll be positive. I don't want to be a hater.
The U.S. focus, those Boston College kids, that line, completely insanely dominant. Mm-hmm. Hagen's honestly looked like the least amazing of that line,
That's
which
fair,
is
yeah,
maybe a little bit of a surprise. You know, obviously they were all really good.
Yeah.
He was relatively shut down in the semifinal, did come back, score a goal in the final.
Big greasy goal.
But yeah, it's, Leonard and Perreault, I think, really the drivers there, which makes it, I guess, between, playing here in juniors and playing in college. Last week, I was talking a lot about Hagen's as the super clear number one. Now, honestly, I'm having just a tiny bit of doubt because like his teammates are so good. Yeah. He's on such a good line. Maybe it's a little bit harder to judge how good he actually is and how good maybe Leonard and Perreault are. But, phenomenal tournament for all three of them. Clearly the best offensive talent that was, in this tournament playing right now. Little Hudson, I was surprised by. I didn't have him pegged as a huge prospect. There's another Little Hudson playing for Boston College, not BU. He's at BU.
No, There's an old, yeah.
So younger than Lane, who's in the league right now. He's like a junior, I believe, in college right now. The point is, there's a Hudson family. I looked at the non-Lane ones, and I was like, these guys are not necessarily top prospects like Lane is. Clearly, based on this tournament, that's wrong.
Well, no. I mean, like, Lane also was a late second-round pick. Dominated at Boston University, had like the best freshman season ever by a defenseman his freshman year, and then he started to build on top of that, and I think we're going to see that with Cole Hudson. I think I'm an idiot for not having him in my top 50 prospects. He would definitely be like in an updated one. As you talk about it, I think that this is just something that is big in a tournament like this. The pre-existing chemistry with the BC line, and I think they had like 2 or 3 other Boston College players. I know Drew Fortescue for sure plays on Boston College. I think Teddy Stiga does as well. Game-winning goal. Shout out Teddy Stiga. But you see with Team USA, they're definitely more of a team than like a Team Canada. Consider the fact that these guys, usually when they're 17, 18 years old, they're playing in the U.S. National Team Development Program. Like most, I think probably like 60 to 70% of those guys came up within that. So when you throw a bunch of young teenagers together on a team, usually it's kind of hard to make chemistry. You got disagreeing egos or something like that. But for America, the U.S. National Team Development Program, it cannot be understated how like important that was for American hockey, and especially at these kind of tournaments where you look at the United States, they have back-to-back golds, 2021, 2017. Like, it's not just this run alone. They have consistently been one of the best, the last 5 years at least, at these given tournaments. Got to shout out my New York Islanders. Danny Nelson was a guy that I thought he had like solid third-line potential, but after seeing him fully, I wasn't watching a ton of Notre Dame games from him, to be honest. He's an absolute baller. His IQ and just overall ability to drive the net and his skating ability really impressed me. I am elated. Don't think that he's going to be some type of like superstar, but I think a potential second liner, like 50 to 55 points alongside a Cole Eiserman down the line, is going to be electric for my New York Islanders. Cole Eiserman's a psychopath. I don't know if you like saw some of his outbursts, and like a couple times he literally just like took people out, and like thank God the refs weren't watching. He needs to calm himself down. But when you have a shot like that, I'll bet on the shot compared to maybe if you have some temperament problems. Like, he is definitely going to be worth the risk, and I think whoever's coaching and the general manager will have to put that in check, whether it's Lou and Patrick Waugh. But yeah, great performance. Zeev Boyum, solid, obviously amazing pass in the game winner.
He turned it on more
Yeah.
as the tournament went on, which impressed me, I think. Boyum was not super great for, the first while of games, and then the semifinal and the final, he hit a new level and turned it on.
Yeah, he showed up in a massive way. Trey Augustine, after a shaky first game against Germany when they allowed 4 goals, remember, like, everybody was clowning on the United States for allowing 4 goals to Germany. He locked the hell in. Shout out the Finland goalie that played Rimpinen, played out of his mind in that game, but it just came up being short. The last, overtime and third period, he got absolutely caved in. Basically, once Finland went up 3-1, he got caved in. And I made a video on it, but David Carl, the United States head coach, that's the Denver head coach. If you're a team with a coaching option or coaching opening, or you're not fully satisfied in your head coach, you should throw a bag at the dude, because he just wins 2 natties in the past 3 seasons and now back-to-back World Juniors. Granted, he has had good teams at Denver in the United States. Not like it's some scrappy underdog, but he coaches them up and develops the talent to be that good. What do you think about David Carl at the NHL level? Do you think it would translate?
I
Learned under Jim Montgomery.
I think it would be worth a try at least. I think it's better than the current recycling they do, right? It's in other sports, you see this all the time, and it's not always successful, but other sports, there's a very clear pipeline of this coach does a great job in the SEC, an NFL team's going to give him a shot. And we just do not see that in hockey at all. And I don't really understand why we don't see that.
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh to the NFL is a good example. From Stanford, then went to the Ravens, was fantastic. Then eventually got fired, then went back to Michigan, fantastic. Now with the Chargers, yet again making the playoffs. We'll move on from the United States because obviously, one more thing in the United States, they're probably not going to three-peat. It should be pretty obvious considering they're losing a lot. All the 2023 guys, Ryan Leonard, Perreault, Danny Nelson, and a bunch of different depth. And Higgins might not even be there. Zeev Boyum isn't eligible next year. Trey Augustine is a 2023 guy. So definitely got to soak it in if you're a United States fan. The tournament actually comes back to U.S. next year. In Minnesota, Hockey State gets the 50th anniversary tournament. But yeah, that's going to be a retool rebuilding year unless Cole Eiserman and James Higgins absolutely go insane, and Cole Hudson as well. But yeah, moving on. Canada, loses to Czechia. We talked about it before. I think we talked about it even before they were eliminated, obviously, last week. They didn't bring the best team, and Dave Cameron's a pretty shit coach and didn't even utilize the roster that he still had. Should have still at least made definitely the semifinals, probably even the finals. Apparently, they're going to shake it up for Team Canada, rightfully so, as they should. But what's your key takeaways for Canada after losing to Czechia? A game that they dominated at the end, but kind of played a shit first period. And then the goalie stood on his head, Michael Herbal, and it was pretty impressive.
Okay, first of all, I do want to give credit to the smaller countries. There was, Germany and Latvia both had pretty decent showings in this tournament, and a lot of people were making fun of, U.S. and Canada, you guys are only doing this against these awful teams. And no, the teams aren't awful. The rest of the world is catching up. There's clearly a big 4 or 5 if you count Russia, and then a drop off. But
I'd say Czechia is definitely
in the mix
entered
there.
the 5th tier. Yeah,
I'm just saying the level of quality of that lower tier is a lot better than it was 10 years ago, and it's probably just going to keep getting better in the future. That's usually how these things go. Canada, though, it's the same thing everyone's been saying the whole time. You just did not bring your best players. Beckett Seneca was actually, he played way better even after Canada snubbed him. OHL Player of the Month in December. Dude was on a tear in the 3 weeks after Canada decided he wasn't good enough. But then also you look at some of the little things in Canada. I mean, the most penalized team in the tournament. Definitely. Heard a lot of stories about canceled practices, and that stuff isn't on the players at all, right? If you're committing that many penalties, to me, that's a coaching thing, right? These young kids, maybe they're hot-headed, maybe they're not so disciplined. You should expect that from a lot of teams in the World Juniors. That's got to be a coaching thing to fix that. It's got to be a coaching thing to have discipline there. And it seems like they just straight up were not coached. Most of the days after that first loss, they were not coached.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, the players that were playing bad, Easton Cowan, there was no accountability. He was still playing a shit ton. But, yeah, Canada definitely needs an overhaul. If they bring their best team next year, they should walk to a title pretty easily, but that's
Agreed.
easier said than done. We thought the past 2 years that they were arguably the favorite. It's going to be interesting. And yeah, besides that, Czechia, got a shout out to them. It's not like there's some slubs. They have guys like Edward Chalet and Michael Herbal that played great, as well as Sweden losing to Finland. And insane stat with them. They have 1 gold medal since 1982. Compare that to 11 silvers, including 4 in a 5-year stretch from 1992 to 1996, 5 bronze, 10 fourth place finishes. So they've made 25 finals since then and have not won a single, or have won 1 gold. What was it, like 2013, 2012 with Mika Zibanejad, funny enough. I really don't know what's going on with that, because they continue, unlike a Finland that has maybe stalled out in terms of producing high-end NHL talent, they have been pumping out NHL talent since that 2012, and even before that. It's just staggering how they're consistently not able to get it done in the biggest moment possible.
I mean, I think it more or less
1-11
makes sense. It's surprising that they don't win more, just because it feels like this kind of a tournament should be a crapshoot. But like, it's, in any given year in the NHL, like, you rank the countries with the most talent in there. Sweden being second or third for like most of the last 30 years basically checks out. But yeah, I mean, it's these tournaments with the kids and with it being, a knockout single elimination, it feels like it should be more of a coin flip than a 1 out of 11 thing.
Yeah. That's the thing that just drives me insane. Like, you think, I'm sure in those games, most of the time when they were playing either United States in the last decade or Canada before that, they were underdogs. I'm not trying to act like they were an absolute super team every single year, but yeah, like a 9% chance going into it, 9% overall in gold medals. It is absolutely crazy. But we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the Vancouver Canucks, because they were in the news a lot there wasn't a ton of NHL news, but Elliot Friedman basically came out and said that although they're not like actively shopping any of these guys, they are definitely listening to offers on Elias Pettersson and JT Miller. More so JT Miller they're listening on, considering the fact that he's a lot older at 32 years old. He has a more reasonable deal that you can move out in terms of making the money cap hit work at only $8 million. And Pettersson objectively has the higher ceiling given his overall two-way game. So yeah, what do you think about this? Do you think that, which one do you think that they should trade? Which one do you think that they will more likely trade? And do you think anything's going to happen? Drinking coffee at 7 p.m. was a bad idea. I'm like tweaking everywhere. But go on. Let me know what you think about that.
Yeah, so it's this trade is going to be so complicated because of the money, like you said.
Mid-season moving that much.
And it's, JT Miller, at least I think, is straightforward enough for anyone trying to buy him. 8-some mil for, a guy who's on maybe the lower side of the aging curve, but still clearly a superstar player. I mean, he's fresh off scoring 90-some points last year. Pettersson at 11 mil is really tricky, especially because if I'm like another team who's going to have to trade a lot of assets for Pettersson, I'm not sure he's consistent enough right now to want to give him that. I mean, I agree with you that he has the highest ceiling. I do think if you're a buyer, especially like an Eastern Conference team where it's so closely bunched up, I think JT Miller for a this year playoff run has the higher floor. So I see Miller getting traded if they do trade at all. I think it's all smoke and mirrors. Should I run through like potential destinations?
I'll go first, because I do
right.
agree with you. Like if they're both playing at their baseline, I think you might rather have JT Miller. Baseline that we've seen the last year or so, you'd rather have JT Miller just because it's a $3.6 million difference. And also I feel like JT Miller will definitely be more of like a hockey trade. You give up a solid player in like a late pick or like a young roster player compared to Elias Pettersson. You're probably not, if you're like a contending team and you're trading for him, you're probably not trading like your other star player in like future assets. So yeah, JT Miller just makes far more sense. And given the fact that JT Miller is kind of bumped from team to team in his career a decent amount, it definitely seems like Vancouver is more willing to move him out. But yeah, what are some of your destinations that you think could be good for JT Miller?
Yeah, it's Miller especially. I feel like Carolina's a great fit. A 1-for-1 for Natchez feels like the most straightforward hockey trade that makes sense for me to both sides. I think Miller is the better player for the near-term Carolina playoff runs. He gives them some much-needed top-end goal scoring. He's probably a better goal scorer than Aho, I would think, overall.
Could be, yeah.
Natchez is a good player. He's not as good as JT Miller right now. Will that change in future years? Probably, but also Natchez is a free agent at the end of next season. So if Carolina doesn't feel great about re-signing him, that trade makes sense to me as a fit.
Yep.
The Islanders.
Wait, actually, can I talk about Carolina first?
Go for it. Yeah.
I was thinking more so like Svechnikov because Natchez he's slowed down a decent amount. Like he wasn't going to go for 105 points like he started out to. I don't know if they would go with Natchez because he has been so good at driving his own line. I think someone like Svechnikov could make sense. A guy that's a little bit younger that fits Vancouver's timeline more, maybe putting him on, he's more of a physical player, putting him on Pettersson's wing could be really good. And also, yeah, I mean, like Svechnikov is just plateaued. I think Natchez, given what he's done this season, I think Vancouver might have to add stuff considering he is younger and just was playing far better this season.
I think it comes down to the contract. If you're scared, like, oh, we're one playoff run away from having to give Natchez maybe even like 10 mil if he keeps this up, that could be a red flag there. The Islanders, I guess, make sense on paper because you have two tradable assets there in Nelson and Dobson. But I think it's tough, right? I don't think either of those guys is good enough to get JT Miller 1-for-1 you'd need to add. I think both of them for JT Miller is probably an overpay.
Oh, yeah.
I think both of them for Elias Pettersson is like theoretically possible, but that kind of a huge in-season blockbuster is just so not the NHL's thing. But like I think the Islanders make sense as far as, you know, Vancouver's trying to compete now, right?
They're not trading him. Yeah.
At time of recording, Vancouver's in the 8th seed.
It's pretty crazy. They're 18-12-8. The Islanders get called an overtime loser point merchant. Vancouver got to pull it together, but they haven't had a shit ton of injuries. I got to be honest with that. But yeah, I think if it was the Islanders, that'd be Nelson. It might have to be Nelson squared, funny enough. Brock Nelson and Danny Nelson for JT Miller, because I do think JT Miller is the better player, and he's also 2 years younger. And yeah, Brock Nelson is going to sign, if he hits the open market, he'd get some kind of like egregious, like 6, maybe not 7 years, but like some long-term deal versus JT Miller, who's younger on about the same term, maybe a little bit of a higher AAV. I would definitely be interested in anything to kind of shake up the New York Islanders core, even if it's not like the most amazing deal. But yeah, just something needs to change. So I think that is a pretty solid one.
It would be funny just because I don't think the Bo Horvat trade has worked out great for them. So like a rerun of that would be interesting. The LA Kings make so much sense as a fit on paper. They have the current pieces, you know, Fiala, you could trade. Byfield, you could trade. Alex Laferriere, you could trade. He's having a good year over there. But it's tough to see an in-season trade between two teams that are really fighting for the same playoff spot. And I understand they could both make it. You could have one of them be Pacific 3 and one of them be Wild Card 2, but it feels so risky on both sides. Like either side, if you make that trade and then you miss the playoffs to the other team, GM's getting fired this summer.
Yeah, I think the Kings should safely make the playoffs. But yeah, that definitely is like if they weren't in your division, you'd probably be more willing to do it. But the fact that I don't see Rob Blake pulling another move maybe on such like a high risk center after PLD was such a disaster. But yeah, they definitely need some kind of moves. I think Boston also could be a decent fit. Something like Pavel Zacha, Mason Lohrei, or like Matty Poncher in a pick. They just need something in terms of like an actual semblance of a first-line center. Like they cannot walk in with Elias Lindholm. That is a disaster. Spoiler alert for my top 10 updated worst contracts in the entire NHL. That deal is probably going to be on it. That deal has definitely gone south. So them being in the JT Miller, I don't expect them. They don't have the assets to go out and get an Elias Pettersson. They would have to trade probably David Pastrnak in any trade with like Elias Pettersson. But like Miller going all in for Miller, that could definitely move me for the Boston Bruins.
It would move me. I don't think they have the assets for Miller either, though. I see the need. I think JT Miller and Boston would be a great fit, and he could elevate Boston back into the tier of the true contenders. But like you're running through names and it's all futures, and I don't think Vancouver wants a futures-based package. I don't think Pavel Zacha plus futures is going to necessarily keep Vancouver in the playoffs, so I'm not sure they'd do it.
No, it's definitely fair, especially if Trent Frederick was actually playing good this year. That could have been a good piece if he was like still a 45-ish point guy, like ideal middle six physical presence. Any other trades you got?
Yeah, we're going through a lot here, but it's good. It's stuff to talk about. I've seen a couple people rumor packages Minnesota based around Marco Rossi.
I don't get that.
I like
no.
Talent-wise, I like the
Rossi's
thought.
Rossi's like better than him this season. I know like off-ice stuff has definitely affected them, but like I don't get the I don't want to go off a tangent, but like the Marco Rossi trade rumors. I don't know like what is going on off the ice with him, but like this guy has progressed so much each year. Last year, 40 points. His first year, he had like 0 points in like 16 games. Then he had 40 points. This year, he's like point per game, but like still, people are like, I think Marco Rossi is available for trade. Like, and especially because he needs a contract extension this summer, but like they have the money. It's not even like it was last summer, and he's asking for an 8x8 or something like that, and you can't pay him. But yeah, Marco Rossi, JT Miller. That'd have to be an Elias Pettersson. I could see maybe an Elias Pettersson this summer if like they make the Western Conference Finals and they think that they're this close getting Pettersson as their true number one. And I get what you're saying, like they might run into the problem where Marco Rossi stalls out and they still don't have a number one center. But if I'm trading Marco Rossi, yeah, it needs to be for like a bona fide number one center that's on like the other side of 30. Not the
Either way, it's not possible. Just salary wise, it's not possible in season. Rossi's on his ELC still. It's impossible to make the math work. I've seen a bunch of people talk about Buffalo for Dylan Cousins as a potential fit. That feels extremely hopeful for Buffalo.
Yeah.
I just don't think Dylan Cousins is very good. I think that would be a really bad return for, either Vancouver player is a bona fide number one, but also how does JT Miller help Buffalo's timeline right now?
I think you'd have to attach like Zach Benson or like Constantinius, like young guys that are Benson's already at the NHL level. Constantinius will be there next year, but yeah, I don't think that they should do this. Just try to rehab Dylan Cousins. Don't bring in JT Miller. You're gonna be fine. Don't rush it. They should not be going all in.
No, they shouldn't. They really
right
shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That's all the teams that came to my mind. Do you have any more?
I'm trying to think. Like most teams are pretty set at second line center and are not going to completely change things up. Like the teams that we went through are struggling, or in Carolina's case, have Jesperi Kotkaniemi as their second line center and clearly needs some kind of improvement. So yeah, sticking in the Pacific though, we are now going to talk about a very interesting deal that was signed a couple days ago, like 2 days ago at this point. Frank Vatrano signed a deal that has a cap hit of 3 years, $4.57 million. But there's a twist. It's deferred money, similarly like to Seth Jarvis, who did some deferred money on his long-term extension. The way that this deal is going is the first 3 years, he's going to get $3 million per year. And then the $9 million that's remaining, $18 million total in this deal. In 2025, there's going to be 10 payments every single year. Every single year over 10 years, there's going to be $900,000 given to Vatrano. So it's $18 million total, but it only has a cap hit of $4.575 million. I'm probably going to botch this explanation, but for the people that don't understand present value of money, don't understand deferred money, this isn't some kind of hack by Anaheim. They're just doing the net present value of the money today, because once that deferred money starts kicking in 2035, the money in 2035 is far less valuable than money today. That goes without saying, because of inflation, because of rate of return that you can get on investments. So although it might sound like, oh my God, like he's getting paid $6 million, but it's only a $4.5 million cap hit, that is not remotely it. That is not remotely it. And honestly, in my humble opinion, I think this is pretty shit for Frank Vatrano. I'd rather get the 4.5 per year up front and then just invest it over the next 10 years compared to when you're getting that $9 million from 2035 to 2045, because with these high net worth players, you can invest it and get 10, 12% returns on the market. Instead, he's just going to wait until 2035. The only way I can see this possibly being a net positive, first off, he, instead of getting taxed in California, he could move to Florida and get a lower tax rate. But even that I still isn't really worth it, considering you're waiting 10 years to get your money. The only way I can think that it makes sense is he's moving to like Puerto Rico, where there's no tax, there's no personal income tax, and you can maintain being a U.S. citizen. Yes, I've looked into that down the line. I moved to Puerto Rico, so that's the only reason that I can think that it makes sense. He's gonna go to the island of Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. territory, so doesn't give up his U.S. citizenship and not get taxed on it at all. What do you think about that theory?
All right. So first of all, I think the main reaction from a lot of hockey fans was like, wow, this is so weird and crazy. Who even thought of this? The Dodgers are the main one. clearly it's modeled after Shohei Ohtani's giant Dodger contract. And I do think in all sports, NHL included, you're going to start seeing a little bit more of that in California because of the tax differences. I don't expect Frank Vatrano to retire out in Puerto Rico. But it's definitely true that a lot of these guys like to live in lower tax areas than California. California has the highest state tax. So I would expect to see quite a bit of this going forward for anyone who plays there. That being said, like you said, I don't really like this from Vatrano's perspective. I think he got some bad accountant advice to push that off for the sake of potentially lower tax returns. The thing about Shohei Ohtani and his deferred money is he is literally the most marketable athlete in the world. Shohei Ohtani made more money in sponsorships last year than more than any NHL player for certain. He made almost as much as the Coyotes spent on payroll just in Shohei Ohtani endorsements. When you're making that kind of money, this deferral strategy can have its perks. Frank Vatrano, I have never seen in a TV commercial. I don't live in Anaheim.
He's got some Honda commercials
TV
at the
there.
Honda Center.
Yeah, maybe. But it feels weird for Vatrano. I mean, it's also possible that was just like the biggest raw dollar amount out there, right? Like when we're saying this is a bad deal, we're assuming that there was some version of life where he just gets a straight up 3-year, $6 million contract. No, and maybe he wasn't. Maybe no one was going to pay him that much.
No, I'm just saying, I think if I was him, I would have taken 3 years, $4.25 million right now and just have that in my bank account at the end of 2028 and just invest it from there. It's confusing, especially if he was getting the deferred money right after he retired. I can maybe see it, say if it was $3 million installments for 3 years. The fact it's 10 different installments starting in 2035, I don't see where the value is on that. The only, I'm not saying to try to speculate anything, but maybe if you don't trust yourself that much with money and you just want after you retire to have just monthly, with the lottery, you can either take the lump sum. You should take the lump sum if you trust yourself, or the yearly installments, just in case you don't want to blow it all. So once a year, you open up your mailbox and you have a check from the Anaheim Ducks or the New Jersey Lottery for your winnings. It's very interesting. It's interesting, but I don't expect it to be some massive thing that carries on in the NHL.
I don't think it'll be huge and massive. I do think San Jose, Anaheim, LA signing big contracts. The other possibility is that this is appealing to Anaheim because they don't have a whole lot of cash right now as an ownership group, maybe. That's possible. It's totally possible that don't. I mean, the Dodgers are one of the richest ownership groups in professional sports anywhere, and they're the kings of deferred money. I mean, that's even with it too, right? Because the Dodgers have signed, 5 or 6 players this winter. They all have deferred contracts. So I don't think it's a one-off thing or a special case thing. I do think this is just the new way to sign players in ultra high tax areas. I could see the Maple Leafs going for the same kind of thing just because they can throw stupid amounts of money down the road and try and lessen the Canada tax factor that Canadian hockey fans get so pressed about with their salary cap and tax rate.
The cap hit should be after tax. I hate that argument.
It's such a dumb thought.
You're in the highest California. The California teams get fucked because they don't have that high of hockey interest and they have to pay that high tax. When Toronto, Montreal, New York, they boast about how they're such a great hockey market and they're we gotta go after tax. But that's a whole different can of worms that maybe we could open on a different podcast.
The point is, I think it gives the Leafs a workaround there.
Definitely. But yeah, if I'm the player, I want the money as soon as I retire, not 10 years or 8 years after I retire or after that deal is done. It's definitely interesting. It's going to be interesting to track this summer because I think Seth Jarvis was the first one to really kick it off with his. But his was only
his was very small.
Yeah, it was an 8x8 or something like that, but the cap hit was only an 8x7.4. He got $8 million in the final, the hypothetical 9th year of his deal. We are now going to talk about the shit show that is the Eastern Conference wild card race right now, specifically that 8th seed. My Ottawa Senators were looking like they were running away with it before they got kicked out of Ottawa because of the World Juniors and were on a 3-week road trip. They're 1-4, and now Linus Ullmark is out week to week. You got teams like Detroit, who we kind of wrote off, going 4-1 since they hired Todd McClellan. The Canadians are 9-4 since Patrick Laine returned. You got teams like Columbus playing very good. Pittsburgh's definitely in the mix. My Islanders, as well as the Rangers, as much as they'd say, could potentially go on a run. For me, I'm starting to get seriously nervous for the Ottawa Senators, not because of this road trip, but just because of the Ullmark injury, like the drop off to Forsberg and like Sogard, having to rely on those guys for 3-4 weeks potentially could absolutely derail their season instead of the usual like November Senators collapse. We might see that in January once the goaltending goes to shit. In terms of who I think is like second most likely, I think it's probably the Red Wings or the Rangers. I hate it as much as I think that the Rangers are not close to a contend. Not even if they make the playoffs, they're going to get outed in the first round pretty easily. I still think that they have the talent to go on like a 15-5 kind of streak. And Chris Drury is probably trading picks at the deadline to kind of contend for this team. On top of Detroit, they objectively have looked a lot better defensively under Todd McClellan. And yeah, I think that they potentially could catch fire. Lucas Raymond is playing great. Larkin's playing great. DeBrinket's playing great. And Steve Yzerman might be willing to make some moves at the deadline. What do you think? Who do you think ends up with it? I still think Ottawa probably ends up with it, but if those would be my next two teams.
I share your concern about Ottawa without Ullmark. I've said it before. I'll say it again now. The Ottawa Senators as an overall roster don't really impress me much. They are 24th in goals this year. That's
what's the expected goal? I don't care about actual results.
Based on like the on paper list of forwards they have, this offense is just not actually very good outside of their top couple guys.
Yeah, Claude Giroux has kind of regressed.
Yeah, Claude Giroux has regressed. Claude Giroux has 13 points in his last 29 games.
Not good.
Claude Giroux turns 37 years old this week. Fantastic player, phenomenal career. We'll probably get at least a little bit of name dropping for the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he's at that level, but we are seeing him regress in real time. Josh Norris has 2 assists in his last 17 games. It's hard to win when your 2C is not making plays for other people, which Josh Norris isn't and kind of never really has.
Pinto looking like? You got Pinto stats pulled up?
No, I don't here. Jake Sanderson, team worst -16. One of the only guys on Ottawa with those kinds of defensive numbers. Now, granted, his Hamonic minutes have been awful.
Yeah,
his Artem Zub minutes have been pretty solid, and now Zub is back. He came back last week, so that should see like a noticeable swing up for Sanderson. But yeah, collectively, the roster I truly don't think is very good, and they'll go as far as Ullmark can take them, which to be fair, I do believe Ullmark, at his ceiling can take them to a wild card spot. I think that's in reach, especially because, like you said, the rest of this competition, everyone in there is flawed. I mean, even Boston's probably a safe playoff team in. They have a -19 goal difference, which in most circumstances, you'd look at that and say, this team's really not very good. The fact that their top 2 centers are Elias Lindholm and Pavel Zacha, you might look at that and say, I really don't think this team is very good. But based on the competition around them, they're like a playoff lock, it feels. I agree with you that the next most likely is still the Rangers, just because like the on-paper talent is there. It's such a shit show in there, and it seems to be entirely locker room stuff. But like, this is 85% of the same team that they won the President's Trophy last year, did they not? Yeah. This is like 85% of the same core roster that was fantastic last year. I kind of just don't believe that everyone regressed this much at the same time. Like, there's clearly off-ice things that are seeping into the on-ice stuff that's making them play worse. But if we're talking about goalies that can drag a team to the playoffs against their will, Igor should be up there. Has Igor been great this year? No, absolutely not. But we know his ceiling is that level. Montreal, I want to believe in. It's just, Laine needs to stay in the lineup, and he came out of the lineup again this weekend, and they just don't have a ton of consistent scoring outside of Laine, Suzuki, Caulfield, Hudson.
Jake Evans is going to slow down. He's shooting like 25%.
He is going to slow down. Yeah. Those are 4 really good players. Everyone else keeping this Montreal offense up feels like a fluke to me.
Jacob Dobbs, like, stealing games for them. They're the random guy that got called up has like a 955 in 3 games. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Canadians could finish like 85 points. That'd be a really good step for them. But I think in terms of making the playoffs, and I don't think that they should be buying at the deadline or something like that, like trading young prospects to potentially go up. But yeah, I think unfortunately the Rangers, if they can beat like two half decent teams in a row, like they beat Chicago, but that doesn't mean shit. They can start rolling and getting back on track. And Shesterkin, although he needs to just straight up play better than he is right now, also last season he had like a 902 until like mid January, late January. It's just like Quick was playing out of his mind and kind of stabilizing them, even though they were such a good team. So yeah, I think that is definitely still the team to beat to potentially take Ottawa's spot. But it's just another shit show, and it's looking like the team that makes it is probably going to be like an 89-point team, which would be pretty funny considering the Western Conference. We probably know the 8 teams, and even the Calgary Flames would safely make a playoff spot as of right now in the Eastern Conference.
It's funny too because in a way it's a repeat of last year, right? Last year the East had 7 pretty good teams.
No, it was 6 because the third Metro spot was like the Flyers, Capitals, and the Islanders ended up being that. Yeah. But now it's just the 2 wild cards.
The Washington, fell into the playoffs by accident because no one else wanted it and got embarrassed in the first round. Props to Washington. Great video earlier about Washington's turnaround. But last year they were the 8th seed, which is just like this is just a truly not good hockey team. No idea how they made it here, and it's not going to be Washington, but we're probably looking at that again for the East 8 seed of just like the Eastern Conference did not have 8 good teams for the second year in a row.
Yeah, and at least this time it's looking like it's going to be wild card spots. Like Carolina had such an advantage last year considering they had to play the Islanders. Meanwhile, the Leafs and the Bruins had to face off against each other in the 2-3, as well as even though the Florida Panthers took care of the Tampa Bay Lightning, they had to play Tampa Bay instead of the Islanders or Capitals. So at least, although we're wholeheartedly agree on this podcast, get rid of divisional seedings. At least this year, it's looking like we know the 3 teams in the Metro, we know the 3 teams in the Atlantic. It's just whoever wins. That's honestly going to be good. It's going to be more incentive to finish first in your respective division because not that it's going to be a guaranteed bye or anything, but you're probably going to have teams that are beating themselves up and not good battling down the stretch. You're going to be able to coast, hopefully, if you lock up your division late in the season and then just take care of business in 5 or 6 games against the New York Islanders or a Pittsburgh Penguins or the New York Rangers that can't. Even the Rangers would be a pretty scary team given Shesterkin. But yeah, teams that have massive flaws are just not good in certain areas to a degree in the playoffs. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun because, yeah, I think in the West, if Calgary starts to cool down, we're probably going to have – and Calgary starts to cool down and the Canucks actually get on track, whether that happens from just getting healthy or a trade. We're probably going to have a boring as shit Western Conference playoff race, which we kind of had last year after the Nashville Predators went on an absolute tear. So, yeah, the East wild card spots, wild card race continues to be absolutely electric. Anything else you got on that?
Nothing else. No. What's next?
All right, we're gonna talk about Jonathan Toews. Apparently, he's trying to make an NHL return. I got this typed out, so I'm gonna explain. He got COVID during the 2021-2022 bubble season. Did not play. Then developed a chronic immune response syndrome. He went to India to get it fixed by doing a bunch of like holistic kind of things, including a detox, which includes painful massages, meditative yoga, and daily laxatives. And apparently he's feeling the best that he has basically ever since COVID happened. And he's at his playing weight. He's been practicing hitting the ice of late. And apparently 3 teams, according to Frank Saravalli, that might potentially want him as a third line center are the Leafs, Avalanche, and Jets. I guess I'll go first. I'd take a swing on him. I don't know. If he wants like the league minimum, go for it. If he wants actually like a solid amount of money, whether it's at the end of this season or the start of next season, I would not be willing to do that, considering the fact that even towards the end, although Chicago also stunk, he wasn't that good. Like it's been 4 years since he's been like a half decent player and just 2 to 3 years since he's actually played. It's not like Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane, we knew that although he had massive hip surgery, he was like playing at the end of last season and still showed flashes of offensive excellence. Jonathan Toews is a complete unknown. I'm sure teams will do their due diligence and work him out. But yeah, it's name value compared to just the facts that he's probably not going to be that good. That kind of scares me and I'd stay away.
Yeah. So first of all, we try to be respectful of everyone here on this show. but I read that Toews article, and I'll be blunt, like it's fake medicine.
No,
it's
no,
pseudoscience.
Dude, I got back numbness. I've had it for like 6 months. If you see me in India,
a forced vomiting India retreat.
I read that. I'm like, this could help me. This could help me.
The Aaron Rodgers health plan.
No.
I don't believe in it, but that's besides the point. What is the point is that, like you said, the last time Jonathan Toews has been a good, productive hockey player was the 2020 bubble. That playoff window against Edmonton, phenomenal series. Turned back the
Last
clock.
Dance.
Spent the next 2 seasons with very below his standards play. Has not been on ice in like a year and a half at this point. I guess I agree with you. Like, if you want to like give him a minimum contract flyer,
forward, yeah.
maybe. But even then, if I'm like a current playoff team, I would be scared of playing him meaningful minutes without improving himself first. I would ask him to suit up for a few games in the AHL just to prove like he can do it. His body can keep up with it. Will Jonathan Toews ever accept that? I kind of doubt it. But if he doesn't, then like, if I'm the Toronto Maple Leafs, I don't want him messing up the mojo with the team currently, right?
You don't think Jonathan Toews is going to roll out there for the Manitoba Moose for a couple of games?
I doubt it. Although I think that it would be in the parent club's best interest for him to play 15 minutes for Manitoba 2 or 3 times just to prove that he can do it.
That would be
and
sick,
like
dude.
he has his legs left.
I think that they would sell that out. That'd be an epic event because he's from Winnipeg. He's Winnipeg born and raised. Like, yeah, take a chance on him. Have him as your 13th forward. Rotate him around. See what you have. But it's probably not going to be much considering it's been so long. Maybe he comes back at the end of this season, gets underway, builds momentum, and then he has a good offseason, and then to start next season he can be good. But I think throwing him in a game 62 probably not going to result in much success for any team.
No, and I also would be worried for real about him disrupting a locker room in ways that you maybe wouldn't want.
Bringing in his Indian medicine?
I don't know Jonathan Toews personally at all. Certainly, the stories about Chicago from a decade ago really make you question his leadership. Everyone back then was super into calling him a great leader.
Let's not dive into that. I get what you're saying, but yeah, there's definitely some concerns with that situation that you definitely can put some blame on Toews, but
I'm not assigning blame. Yeah. We can cut this out if you want to.
No, we don't cut anything.
Just the fact that he was like a former captain, highly paid, seems to have a decent enough ego. It could disrupt a current system that
I get what you're saying.
Like
the name and the prestige, him walking into the locker room, playing the role as a 4th line center, definitely could be a little distracting.
If he
not saying he'd try to be like getting in every media interview, like making it all about himself, but yeah, there definitely is something to that. Like the Winnipeg Jets trying to win a Stanley Cup, and then Jonathan Toews comes back at game 65, and everybody's like trying to like talk. Everybody's talking about him, and if you're Josh Morrissey, Mark Scheifele, you're like, what the hell?
That's another good example too, right? Because Winnipeg, we know very recently had a really volatile, let's say, locker room. The Wheeler Line era had a lot of talent, but that was a really bad locker room. So right now their locker room seems good. Everyone seems to be on the same page and actually like each other, which clearly was not true when Blake Wheeler was the captain there.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to do follower takes. If you follow the Instagram or follow my Instagram, I post a couple hours or the day before asking you guys for takes. We want to get you guys engaged. So you guys send in your takes, not like a hot take or anything, kind of like 50-50. So it's up for debate. And me and Babiak are going to count it down 3, 2, 1 and say whether or not we agree or disagree. Up first from straight out of Puchkov, Hudson is the Calder pick right now if the season ended today. 3, 2, 1, agree. I'll go first. I agree on a per-game basis. Macklin Celebrini has been the better pick, but he missed 12 games. He missed like over 75% of the season. I think that does have to matter if the season ended today. If we're picking the rest of the way, I would pick Macklin Celebrini. He's probably going to finish like 65-ish points in 70-ish games. That's a monster season, and his goal scoring has been so impressive. But I think Lane Hudson, sorry, we're talking about Cole before. Lane Hudson, to do what he has done, starting out the season, not even on the top power play, 27 points in 39 games, playing 22-34 at night, has been so impressive, has maybe had some defensive lapses, but you expect that from a young defenseman. The offensive so far outweighed that. that right now, if the season ended today, Lane Hudson would be my Calder pick.
I respect it. I can't
Again,
ignore
yeah,
it from Celebrini at this point, but what Hudson's doing is impressive. I would put him as a finalist if the season ended today.
Would you have him or Michkov? The season ended today.
I would probably take him right now over Michkov.
Michkov has slowed down a decent amount.
Coming into the season, Hudson wasn't even on my radar as a Calder type guy, and now he's in the race. That's cool. I wouldn't give it to him though. Yeah. I just think what Celebrini's doing is too impressive.
That's fair. Yeah. Again, per game basis, I don't think it's that close. But if you miss 12 games, that's got to matter when we're only at game 42 for the San Jose Sharks. As of right now, next up, Brooksy 92. Brady Tkachuk will not be on the Senators for the start of the 2027-2028 season, so he will be gone. 3, 2, 1. Disagree. I'm going to be optimistic. I think that they still make the playoffs this year. I think if they don't, then he might seriously start considering it because it's been rebuilding for a while. But I do think, considering he's the captain, considering he is kind of the face of the franchise, even though Tim Stützle is the better player, we can agree on that. I think that they're going to figure it out. Maybe they won't be high contenders. Maybe by 2030, if he's 30 and they still haven't gone on a deep playoff run, he might want out. But I think as of right now, that's 3 seasons from now. That actually is a long time. He potentially could want out by then. Definitely by 2020. I think he'll be on the roster 2026, 2027 starting season. But yeah, I'm going to bet on the Ottawa Senators, hopefully. I know you're lower.
Yeah, I'm taking the anti there. It's like I said a little bit earlier. To me, the roster they've built around Stützle and Tkachuk is just not super impressive. It feels like, as far as rebuilding the young pieces, they've basically plateaued. Like as an organization, you don't really have any more A-caliber guys to slot into the NHL lineup. Mm-hmm. So, like, I don't know if they're actually going to keep getting better and better, or if it's kind of like, well, Stützle, Tkachuk, Sanderson, Batherson, Norris, these guys are all more or less in their primes now. And it's, if they miss the playoffs this year, or if they miss it next year, you start looking at it like, what can we actually do to improve? And I think Tkachuk makes sense as like a shake-up type piece.
Yeah, and he might just also want to say it's over. If they trade Brady Tkachuk, they're probably tearing it down, though, I would say.
That would just be brutal, because if you trade Tkachuk to me, that probably means, you did your whole tear-it-down rebuild. The results were really underwhelming. You maybe make, one wild card team in that decade-long span, and then immediately tear it down
I disagree with you, but I'm just saying, the logic would. I don't think Brady Tkachuk is the heart and soul of that team. I think a shake-up piece would probably be trading like Drake Batherson, a core piece who's been great and is on a fantastic deal. But if they're out of a playoff spot in a year or two, maybe they just say, we got to bring in someone else instead of him. But yeah, we'll move on there. I'm obviously a lot higher on Ottawa than you. Jonah Lewis 06 says, Marchenko is better than Svechnikov. I guess he's saying right now we're going to take that as 3, 2, 1. Agree.
Disagree.
Dude, Marchenko has 43 points, 17 goals in 40 games this year. Svechnikov has 28 in 40. Marchenko has been better defensively. Marchenko is just been fantastic on the Columbus Blue Jackets, and it's been a linear progression where I don't think that he's going to be like a 100-point guy, but I think that he has taken sizable steps every single year, basically since he's debuted for Columbus. Versus Svechnikov, I mean, he's plateaued and has gone down this season, and he's been given every single opportunity in Carolina. Carolina fans are starting to turn on him based on what I see in social media, and I'm starting to buy the theory that Svechnikov was like 2 to 3 years older than his birth certificates. Like, that's what Carolina fans are starting to say, because the dude genuinely peaked at like 19, 20 years old, so that could add some validity to that he's older than he actually is. I'm going rapid theories, speculation on this episode. But yeah, Svechnikov is what he is. He's a physical guy that doesn't play a ton of defense, even though he's on the Carolina Hurricanes. He's fast, but he can't really finish for jack shit. Give me Marchenko, who has been far better this season, and they're the same age.
I mean, I agree. I guess purely who hypothetically would you put on the All-Star team this year? Marchenko over Svechnikov. I basically agree with all your criticisms of Svechnikov, although
he's more proven.
When you say he's been given every opportunity, I'm not so sure. He's a scoring wing who's never really been given like a number one center to work with.
Sebastian Aho's like
they don't play together.
That's not Pavel Zacha. No, they play together a decent amount. they've over the last 4 years, they definitely played a decent amount where they should have clicked. I think they might still play together, but yeah, he's been put on a line with Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis last year. Natchez, he's played with Natchez. Like, we just know what he is at this point. I think teams have figured him out. Yeah, he's a fast dude off the rush, but he just keep him away from the front of the net, and he can't really finish from the outside. So that's where I'm at on Svechnikov. Still a very good player, but it's just not that impressive. I still think, because I think I saw this debate somewhere else. There was an Instagram post, and I think I threw on my story. If you were doing like a redraft for 2018, you still go with Svechnikov just because basically since he debuted, basically since his second season, from like till like 2023, Marchenko was a nobody, while Svechnikov was like a 70-point pace guy. So if we're talking that, it's still Svechnikov. But right now and going forward, I think I would go Marchenko. And I think I had him as a breakout player to start this season.
I mean, it's fun. It's cool. Good for Marchenko that he's broke out like this. And it's cool that this is like a real discussion. I mean, I'm not going to tell you Svechnikov is so amazing and Marchenko is so terrible. I think for me, it kind of just comes down to like, I want to see Marchenko do this pace over a full season.
Track record, definitely. That's definitely in your corner. Lastly, we're going to go with Michael Leviathan. The Canucks should consider moving off Demko. 3, 2, 1. Disagree.
Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
I think if Shilov's was legit this season and really took over while Demko was out, then it's a serious conversation to have, considering Demko only has one more year after this at $5 million and probably would want a decent bag. But considering that hasn't happened, he's actually looked like kind of shit. And I don't think you move off Kevin Lankinen. You give Kevin Lankinen some kind of extension to move off Thatcher Demko. I think at this point you ride with Demko, considering he's making only $5 million this season and next. And if he can't stay healthy, it's not like he's going to get this mega deal, 8x8, 8x9 by the time he's a free agent. So I think you just got to ride the course. And again, as we talked about before, they have other guys that they got to deal with. Thatcher Demko seems to be a good guy in that locker room and overall liked guy. If this summer, if he comes back, he's hurt right now, but it's minor. If he has another massive knee problem, then we can talk about it. If he's out another 30 games and can't play for the playoffs for some reason, then we can reinvestigate this. But I think right now they're set. They don't have a succession plan quite in place right now, so just run with Demko.
Thatcher Demko is a good goalie. I've noticed something about Vancouver Canucks fans is they seem to have a lot of good players, and then the fans seem to be like really, really critical of those good players and act like they're actually terrible.
No.
Like Pedersen and Miller and Demko are all great players. Demko has struggled staying healthy this year, which is unfortunate, but his overall track record is not like so injury prone.
Yeah. Besides, 2022, 2023. But besides that, he played like around 50, 55 point.
Yeah, he's been one of the more workhorse goalies, I would say, generally since his emergence in 2020. You know, he's shouldered good minutes. He has not been amazing this year, but, you know, that's dealing through injury. I don't believe he was fully recovered, given that he's, you know, the injury that happened to him last week. Unfortunate, nothing you can do about that. But it's, you know, goalies take time to work their way back into it. Also, you know, if you're going to say the Canucks should move off Demko, you need to then ask and get who. And if you've seen the goalie moves that Colorado has made this year, you would know that like the available goalie market right now is really rough.
Yeah.
And like Colorado already took like the usable 1B. I don't think there's even a single 1B that you could trade for this season that would like for a playoff team would give me any kind of confidence. I don't see any options on the market.
If Varley is healthy, I guess you trade for him the remaining 2 years at $2.75 million as a veteran presence. But yeah, as you mentioned, the market isn't there and he's cost controlled. It's not like he's making $7-8 million and just eating away at your cap. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be surplus value the next year and a half, and you have other problems. But yeah, that about wraps it up. Another solid episode in the books. Let us know in the comments. What do you think about it? Follow the Instagram so you can be involved whenever we do these kind of stuff, asking you guys. And yeah, we'll be seeing the next one. It's our sport now. Freebird blasting all week. Peace.